Hello SGD, Sacred Geometry Decoded in the description, and I'll pin a comment as well. On the last video, we're looking at the relationship of the geometry of the Great Pyramid to the Earth and the Moon, and the relative size. But also in the last one, we're looking at miles, phi, and kilometers, but also how the barycenter, the way the Moon orbits the Earth, is embedded in this geometry as well. That'll be a link. So Earth and Moon based on the Great Pyramid, but what we have is the three major pyramids there. And what else are they incorporating? Well, cool information in regards to that. And that has to do with the Sun, Mercury, Venus, Earth, and also Mars. And so we have the geometry links into there. And future, I'll do it soon again, how the imperial measurements metric measures the Egyptian royal via the 1 second pendulum. Also incorporates amazing information in regards to the heavens, basically. So we have smaller the inner planets. This would also, same info will also apply to Saturn and some others as well. But we also have the three pyramids. So the idealized measures, but for instance, the base of a Great Pyramid 440 Egyptian royal cubits, 280 high. Khafre Pyramid 411 wide, 274 high. And the smallest of the three, the Menkaure Pyramid, 200 Egyptian royal cubits wide on the southern side and 125 Egyptian royal cubits high. Now the Khafre Pyramid is a 2:3 ratio, and the Menkaure Pyramid is an 8:5 ratio. But weights and measures, Fauves guides of architecture, knowledge, maths, they're all got the same thing going on. But so information regarding to the Moon, so not just the relative size of the Moon in regards to the Earth, but also its orbital, the barycenter there being linked through the same geometry. But that's the Great Pyramid on its own. But using this same geometry and also considering the other Khafre's and Menkaure's pyramid, we have more information going on. Now, for instance, we have the 3-4-5 triangle, very important in, the symbolism of architecture groups such as the Masons. Now it's based on the Vesica Pisces, which is the 2:3 ratio of Khafre's pyramid. 3 wide, or 411 Egyptian royal cubits, 274 cubits high, so 3:2. And you can see there, that's the Vesica geometry, which also gives us the 3-4-5 triangle, the first of the Pythagorean triplets in there as well. And we can get that from the Vesica. And I mention that because the Khafre Menkaure pyramid will come in, but we also see on this size of the Earth, it was John Michel, who I believe he was the first to also show these 3-4-5 triangles also embedded in there as well. Lovely sense. But the Great Pyramid, they have a right angle triangle, and we're talking right angle triangles. That would be 14:11, which gives us the relative size of the Earth and the Moon. The 3:2 ratio and the Vesica, so we overlay that. You see the Vesica. So again, we're cutting that down by 0.2727, so 27.3%. I'll just be using that as a reference. And we can follow that through. Now we have the 14, 11, 8, and 5. And the 8:5 ratio is in there as well, which gives us the Menkaure pyramid. And we follow that through just with the Vesica. So now we've divided that 14. 14 minus 11 is 3, so that's the step. And so 14 minus 3 is 11, minus 3 is 8. 8 minus 3 is 5. 5 minus 2, 5 minus 3 is 2 as well. So we're beginning with a 2:3 ratio as well, which is a nice geometric link in there. And also we see this 8:5 ratio of the Menkaure pyramid being in there. The 2:3 ratio of Khafre's pyramid, well, so Fibonacci numbers 1, 1, 2, and 3. The next Fibonacci numbers are 5 and 8, and that's the Menkaure pyramid. So, and well, now use that, and what we actually have is some really cool now Fauv-Chesed guides of ancient Egyptian gods, architecture, surveying, astronomy, geometry, math, record keeping, and most importantly weights and measures, science. And so this geometry, which we have the radius of the circle being 11, and therefore the radius is half of a circle, so half of the square would be 11, so we can call that 1, and that would be the, so 0, 5 would be 0.45, etc. And planets. Now, astronomers use a measurement called an AU, or an astronomical unit, which is the average distance from the sun to the Earth. Now, because we're on the Earth, that's convenient, of course. However, and I'll remember to link this as well, there's it was actually developed by a fellow by the name of Titus, but it's first published by Bode, so now it's called Bode's law, and it uses Vesica geometry, the seed of life, to describe the distances between the planets. Now, what's beautiful about Bode's law is that not only, so I'll put that link in there. In short, there are two exceptions to Bode's law, Venus and Neptune. Now, Venus fits Bode's law a slight fraction out, but Venus, and same with Neptune, but Venus and Neptune are special cases. Now, for instance, Venus is the only planet which they all orbit in the same direction, but Venus rotates in the opposite direction. Neptune is tilted on its side, so generally agreed that Venus and Neptune have had something really weird happen to them in the past, probably a major, so they're not normal in that sense. But Bode's law, not only is it very accurate, Bode's law actually predicted the asteroid belt as well as Uranus. So not only did it describe what was already there with this really simple, lovely geometry, it also predicted planets and planetoids such as the asteroid belt, which weren't even known about yet. And that's what makes describing something that already happens is great, but a theory predicts things which are not. A theory will predict what is to happen. And interesting thing about Bode's law is it's forbidden to cite Bode's laws in most of the major astronomical journals, and the astronomers don't like Bode's law. However, people looking for planets in other star systems have begun to pay attention to Bode's law, and have also begun to pay attention to the golden ratio as well. But so Earth is one now. Earth is one astronomical unit. Well, we're on Earth, so that would be a convenient. But it just so happens that Bode's law places Earth at 1 as well. So according to Bode's law, Earth is 1. So there's a nice link there. I'll put this, even if you just put in SGD into YouTube, SGD, Bode's law. I've got a couple of videos up on there. Very simple, lovely geometry, very simple arithmetic, and it predicts things. Now, what's happening now, for instance, so this geometry, which of course, now I'm not showing earlier in the graphic, we have the Great Pyramid is the basis of that. Now, so 1 is Earth, and it just so happens that the next placement on this ruler would place that's where Venus orbits through. All the planets are slightly elliptical, so they go back and forth. However, they will pass through these points, and so that predicts where the orbit of Venus. It also predicts the orbit of, not predicts, it describes the orbit of Mercury. So we have the inner planets coming from the same geometry, which describes the barycenter of the moon's orbit around the Earth, and yeah, same geometry, Earth and Moon, but also the planets too. And this is based on Fibonacci numbers and very simple geometry. So we see how those divisions describe, well, where the planets orbit around. It's also worth noting that the orbit of the Moon at its maximum is 0.00272727 AU. The same difference there, which describes the size of the Earth, it's just shifted over 2 decimal places as well. So it's the same, yeah, and now also What about Mars? Well, the 8 to 5 ratio of a Menkaure pyramid, which is also how we arrived at that. Well, that would nicely place, so 1, if 5 is 1, then 8 is 1.6, essentially the golden number, which we saw in the Great Pyramid. We could have even used the idealized slope length in regards to half base of a Great Pyramid, 1.61859, etc. And it just so happens that Mars orbits through that place as well. And of course, Mars is accurately described by Bode's law. Bode's law would put it at 1.6. So the nature of and design, now call it what you will, it actually works. Whether this was the intention, whether it was part of a design, I can't say. It's no smoking gun, but again, I'll put a link to a playlist in there where I go through, because a couple of these things, yeah, well, it's coincidence, but the more and more you delve into it, whether it's the units of measurement, the geometry, it's just simply repeated all and over again. And what we just have is textbooks in stone, really, and this same geometry can be found in other places such as Stonehenge and the Manio quadrilateral in Karnak in France as well, and also other sites, Parthenon, for instance, too. And so we have different shapes, different designs of these ancient architecture, but the proportions, but also which is nice, but also the measurements in there as well, keep repeating and bringing us back to harmony points between multiple sets of ancient measure, and also the proportions are backed up by the measures themselves. But it's very convenient at the least that the planets are there just like the Earth and the Moon, also, so Sun, Mercury, Venus, Earth and Mars as well fit very nicely into this particular geometry, which blends so nicely into Bode's law, which was very similar to the some of the ideas that Kepler was working on in regards to platonic solids too, and the universal constants are set and the geometry is set. These are rules in there, and it shouldn't be. Now, for instance, sunflowers, pine cones. It simply is. It's a beautiful, very elegant, very simple mathematics that describes life. I'll put a link into there. I did a recent video talking about the Fibonacci numbers, Fibonacci spiral, and how that particular math not only describes, for instance, the spirals in pine cones, but it also creates a set of circumstances that if there's a mutation or something happens to these living things, that they can repair themselves just by repeating the same geometry as it goes around. And again, it's very elegant, it's very simple, and it just describes so many elements of our world, of our reality, and why, if you in the past they had to develop this knowledge, why build these giant things? Well, what's more important than this kind of understanding, this kind of knowledge? This deserves a pyramid. This deserves massive stone circles. This deserves those beautiful temples such as the Parthenon, and why they embody. And it's the quadrivium. It's geometry, astronomy, arithmetic, and music. And again, these ratios are musical. It's 2 to 3, and also 5 to 8. So in regards to music theory and why certain structures of music appeal to us, well, they're based on, again, this same geometry, which describes Earth and Moon, as well as Sun, Mercury, Venus, Earth, Moon, Mars, also in Saturn and Jupiter as well. And of course, Bode's law describes the outer planets as well, up to, well, Pluto's a special case because Pluto will actually come closer to, so it's, yeah, okay, well, that's a whole thing in regards. Pluto's not really a planet, it's a Kuiper belt object. It's not orbiting on the ecliptic. All the other planets are orbiting on the ecliptic. Pluto does not. Pluto is not a planet. And so geometry, planets, moons, it's just a lovely thing. And all of this, I'll show you in future uploads. the yard, the meter, and the Egyptian royal cubit also embedded.